Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. We're going to get started in our training in just a second. Want to thank those of you showing up early and on time. I really appreciate that. When you do, it helps us all get started pretty fast and lets LinkedIn push the word out. Says, hey, we're doing training. Before we get started, though, I'd like to give just a quick tip for those of you showing up early and on time. And my tip is one I've given before. So if you've been here this week, you'll know what I'm going to say is make sure you register in the NASA vendor database. They had about 1,000 small businesses registered in the database, and they want to go to 10,000. And in this week alone, we have helped them grow by almost 20%. And that's huge. And if I just expand the tip a little bit, don't forget about the other 99 supplier portals that agencies and large primes have, because that's where they go to find small businesses like yours. I want to make sure you're where the buyer is looking, and that's in their supplier portals. And for NASA, that's in the NASA vendor database. You can find, maybe somebody will be generous enough to throw a link into my article or my newsletter article or video, but I did a video that walks you through the step to register for NASA's vendor database so that it only takes you 5 minutes of time. The first couple of times I did it, I was like getting lost down these rabbit holes. So I just made it a very easy roadmap to follow. But that's my tip for those of you showing up early and on time. I really appreciate when you do that. And so I want to give you a tip. Okay, let me get started with my formal training here. Just get my ducks in a row. By the way, we have a really good crowd, over 140 people. I'm expecting it'll probably be 200 by the time we're going. So 200 people live in today's training on a Friday, which is not bad, right? Make sure you're letting people know that you're open to connections. And by the way, don't just say I'm open to connections and sit back and wait for networking to happen. It does not happen that way. Friendships, networking, they all take proactive energy. And so if you see other people, even if they don't say they're open to connecting, if they're here in my training, they are. But if you see other people and from the chat, it looks like, oh, there might be some synergy, reach out, just connect with them or send them a quick little message. Saw you on Neil's training. Love to see if there makes sense for us to connect. So just let people know that you're open and then actually reach out and talk to them. So today's training and the topic of today's training is about how to get federal buyers to take your call. And there's really one main reason why federal buyers don't take your call. They don't take your call because the process is flawed. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Sometimes I'm doing something and my process is flawed, and so I'm not getting the results I want or expect. And so what I would suggest is that if you're not getting meetings with federal buyers, if they're not even taking your calls or responding to your emails, then there's something wrong with your process. Don't worry about it. I'm here to help. That's the whole point of my training today. It's the point of all the training I've been doing for the past several years. When you have a proven process and you follow that proven process, you can reverse engineer where you're running into difficulties. So for example, I teach the 7-step process for federal revenue success. If you're not familiar with it, 7 steps. It begins with research and then targeting, outreach, relationships, opportunities, proposals, and sales. When I look at this and I think to myself, and I'm looking at my company, that we're not making enough revenue. We're not hitting the revenue goals we want. Well, I can look at that process and say, well, are we winning? Are we getting the sales that we're looking for? If we're not, I don't have to spend a lot of time there because I can go back one step to proposals. Are we submitting enough proposals? Yes or no? Are we submitting enough winning proposals, meaning proposals that are really going to knock the buyer's socks off? And if we're not submitting enough proposals or not having enough winning proposals, I go back into the opportunity step of the 7-step process and say, am I doing capture in there? Do I have the right opportunities in my pipeline? And you can do the same thing. If I don't have a good enough pipeline, or if I'm not able to do enough capture on an opportunity in my pipeline, it's because the step before that, relationships, that's probably a weak area. I don't have enough good relationships in agencies or teaming partners. And it's the same thing in cold calling, which is that outreach step, the 3rd step in the 7-step process. But as I'm walking back, that 3rd step is outreach. And that's basically what we're talking about today. You're doing outreach to federal buyers. You're doing cold calling. You're trying to get them to take your email or respond to your email or take your phone call. And if they're not doing that, you can look within that process and go, well, are we doing the things we need to do? And that's what we're going to cover down on today. That's really what I want to show you is some tips for you so that starting next week, you start increasing the amount of calls that are being taken and emails being responded and the meetings you're able to set up with federal buyers. We want to make sure that you know how to get federal buyers to take your call. Okay, so I'm going to break down today's training into 3 parts. The first thing I want to talk about is if you want federal buyers to take your call, you must be worthy of their time. What does that mean? Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but you need to be worth their time. The second thing we're going to cover down is the perfect voicemail script and email template. And when I say perfect, I don't mean it's a hack or it's a trick or anything. I just mean there's a way to write emails and to do voicemails, etc., that get people to respond. And there's ways to do it where people just will ignore it. And then the third thing we'll wrap up with is just understanding that the success in getting buyers to take your call is in the follow-up. Too many of your competitors do 1 call or 2 calls and they stop. What you need to be doing is a significant amount of follow-up in order to get the federal buyers to respond to you. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret, it's just a process. Part of the process goes from A to Z, and when you follow a process, you're going to have repeatable, predictable results. That's what I want for you. That's why I'm doing my training. By the way, just for the fun of it, for those of you who've been here a lot with me, today I just got my son off to the side, and I'm occasionally looking over there. He's a silent participant in my training, but he's 10, and it's fun to hear him sometimes talking to people going, this thing's not a secret. It's just a process. Okay, if you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to our newsletter, Government Contracting Success newsletter. It's the largest newsletter out there in the government space on LinkedIn, and it keeps growing because we just put quality information. So today's issue, as an example, is about FPDS and how it is the very best tool for capture within the federal market, because I can go in, I can learn about stuff, I can find contracting officer information, et cetera. And that article today lays out a typical FPDS item or a contract award where you can look at that breakdown. So go take a look at that in there and make sure you subscribe to the newsletter. If you're over on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook, come on over here into LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where we're able to talk with each other, where you can actually talk with the buyers. You can't really do that anywhere else. And then last thing I just wanted to mention is I just want to first say thank you to those of you who registered for today's training. I think we had about 115 people registered for today's training, and we're over 200 people on LinkedIn, YouTube, et cetera, live today. So first, thank you, because when you register, it's an easy thank you to us. Second, LinkedIn pushes the word out. So I'm going to put out all new training for next week. I got a lot of good training. Make sure you register for those trainings. Let us know that you're coming. Okay, so let's begin with when we think about trying to get buyers to answer our call, right? We need to be worthy of their time. And actually, by the way, before we get too far, let me back up a slide and stop you from reading 1 second. In the chat, if you could do me a favor, how many people do you think in the last week, this week, it's March 18th through 22nd, how many new people did you reach out to? Do me a favor and put that into the chat. I'd love to see that. Is it 5 new people you reached out to? And I don't care if it's industry partners or government buyers. When you look at success in the government contracting world, it's about relationships. Relationships begin with you reaching out to new people. So forget about a networking event you might have gone to, but how many new people have you reached out to this week? 5, 10, 25, 100? Just let me know. I'm curious about that. So when you think about reaching out to these federal buyers, the first thing I want you to keep in mind, and we sometimes forget, is that these federal buyers do not work for us. We don't work for them either, but they don't work for us. And so when we call them, we need to be in the mindset of being very appreciative of them taking our call. They're busy, just like you're busy. They're busy. And if they take our call, we should be ecstatic. If they answer our call and answer our questions, we should be really appreciative of them, right? If they don't answer our calls or don't get back to us, right? We also need to cut them some slack. They have their whole life out there. They're dealing with stuff. And so just keep in mind, these people don't work for you. They're there to help you. And when you finally get a relationship built with them, they will help you. Okay, so let's talk about 3 things that I really wanted to point out about what does it mean to be worthy of their time. You got to remember they're getting 100 calls, let's say a day or a week. They're constantly being called by small business people trying to get into their agency. How many cold calls do you really get? Forget about the, hey, sign up for healthcare, or hey, here's another spamming. How many true normal cold calls do you get a week? Now, multiply that by 100 plus for the person you're calling, because federal buyers get called constantly. And so when we call them, we want to be worthy of their time. We want them to quickly be able to determine that, oh, these people are different than others. Let me look at them. And so first thing I need you to do is to make sure you have a clear, focused offer. If you go in with many core competencies, we sell this, we sell that, etc., then you're increasing the workload on that person. They're like, oh my God, now I got to first figure out what you sell and figure out where it fits, compared to if all you did was call them and say, we sell elevator services. That is very simple. They either know what you're talking about or they don't. They either can help you or they can't. But when you do multiple things, they have to think much harder about it. But when you do one thing, they can instantly say, oh, I can help you. No, I can't help you. Or you know what? Sally can help you. Second thing that you can do that makes sure that you're worthy of their time is the dynamic small business search and SAM make up your small business profile. Complete your small business profile. Have it have all the information filled out, the capability narrative. If you have experience, put that at the bottom. Put a lot of that experience in there. If you have different contracting vehicles on GSA, make sure that GSA and SBA are all connecting so your information is getting shared. All that information in DSBS is how a government buyer decides whether you're the right fit for them. And they have to make these decisions fast. So if you're filling out your profile, then you're worthy of them, worthy of their time. And this is my words, not theirs, right? But if you don't fill out your profile, you're making them have to interpret a lot of things and figure things out. And one little simple example of how important it is to do a complete profile, small business profile, is inside of DSBS, there is a section for your website. And it's got a website, www URL, I think it says, and then another one is like email, but there's two websites right on top of each other in DSBS. If they do not say HTTPS, then what you're doing is scaring the buyer that maybe if they click on your profile, it goes to an unsecure site. You're not being worthy of their time because you haven't made it easy for them to trust your website. That's a very simple fix. It's a very simple example. But when you do this, you're making the point of demonstrating that you have completed your profile and you're worthy of their time. The last one is make sure you do your homework. I put out all sorts of content constantly to help you do your homework. This week, it's all been NASA. I've dropped out management performance challenges that you can look at. In fact, I dropped out an IT strategic plan. And in that strategic plan, I was able to reference back to their management challenges. And one of the big challenges was IT and how bad it's going within NASA. Well, when you start seeing that, knowing that, you're demonstrating to the other person, that federal buyer, that you care. And there's this great line that says, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And so what it means is you're demonstrating through anything you say, any interaction, that you've done your homework and that you've cared enough about them that you've taken the time to learn about their agency. So anyways, those things are helping you be worthy of their time. The last thing is make sure you're a match, right? Just make sure you're reaching out to somebody. You're not reaching out to, for example, in naval NAVWAR, Naval Information Warfare Center systems. Don't reach out to them and ask them about facility maintenance or, hey, I really want to mow the lawns of naval installation bases. It's like, no, go to NAVFAC, Facilities Command, right? Go there. Take the time to make sure that when you're calling somebody, what you sell, your products and services, are a match for that other person. I don't mean go in and they're buying it now, but I mean have a general idea that you don't call the chief information officer and ask them about janitorial services, right? There's a good match. Make sure you're calling people and you are a good match for them. Okay, so the next one is that I want to talk to you about is a perfect voicemail script and email template. It's really important for when you're sending stuff out to a federal buyer that you are brief and concise. And what I want you to think about what brief and concise means is, think about social media. When you are on your phone and you're just scrolling through your phone, you're really looking for something to catch your attention. And then you want to be able to read that in very quick ways, right? You don't want these long paragraphs that are in there where, it just gets boring. I literally saw somebody reach out and ask for my help. And it was like a message that big, full of text, no paragraphs even. And I looked at it, I said, oh, I'd love to be able to help. Now I'll get to it later. And I probably will never get to it later. As much as I would want to, two things. One is I'll get a bunch more emails asking for my help, pushing it down. And the second is it's even when I come back, I'm like, it's too much. It's like too much friction. And if I'm feeling that way about emails coming to me, when I reach out to federal buyers, I need to have that same consideration with them. I need to make sure my message gets right to the point. And so one of the ways you can get right to the point is have one ask of them. I have one particular question that I want to get answered. That's the start of a relationship. When you think about today's training, it's called how to get federal buyers to take your call. It's not how to have a good third meeting, right? Once you start having meetings, then you're good. You can start adding more meat into the meetings, if you will, right? But in the very beginning, you're really just trying to get them to respond to you, because if they respond, now they're like a fish on a hook, right? I'm hooking them, and I'm going to play them. I'm going to let them run out. I'm going to reel them in, not to get all brutal with fish, but I'm only doing one thing. I'm just trying to get them to bite my hook and start the relationship. And then I will begin to demonstrate things back and forth. And so this idea of having one ask is the most important thing that you can do. And I'll show you an example on the next slide, what an ask is. But one of my current favorites, because I don't think it's on the next slide, one of my current favorites that I like is, I did training last week, I think, on simplified acquisition procedures. And what I suggested, because there are several agencies who have simplified acquisition or SAP guides on how that's done in their agency, I said, reach out and just ask, hey, I'm trying to get a copy of your simplified acquisition procedures guide. Could I get a copy of that? Right? Something that simple makes them go, do I have it or do I not have it? So you have this one ask. The next thing is you want to make it very easy for a buyer to respond. So when you think about this third bullet, like I said, somebody sent me this bulk. I literally saw somebody just sent me, and I don't mean to disparage them, but said it in tough love, is somebody just sent me a long message, and it began with, I know you're busy, let me be brief. And then it was this long. I'm like, no, if it was brief, it would have been one sentence, and it wouldn't have said, I know you're busy, let me be brief. It would have just said, how do I do this, or something, right? And we need to respect other people's time. And part of it is just out of respect of their time, but other parts is, if you really want the federal buyer to respond to your phone call, respond to your email, then make it very easy for them to respond to you. One of the ones that I don't like doing initially is, in a long range forecast, reaching out and trying to ask if this is an active opportunity still, or, where are we? Because a lot of people have to go through and just look at it and do extra research. And so now what I've done with my emails, I've reached out and I've asked them to go do a bunch more work. And but if I make it easy to respond and I just look at a long range acquisition forecast, I can reach out and say something like, your name is listed. Quick question. Are you the point of contact or not? Right? And it gives them the ability to say yes or no. And I don't care what they say. If they respond, now I can talk to them more. Now we've got this email thread going. If I want, I can respond back and say, if they said no, I could respond back and say, hey, thanks so much for the quick reply. I appreciate it. Is there anything, do you happen to know who is the right person? So now I can maybe ask two questions. Do you happen to know who the right person is? And sorry, I'm trying to think this one through. I didn't actually write it down, but this idea of saying, who could I reach out to get them to remove your name? Is it all right if I reach out to the contracting officer and tell them to take your name off? Something like that. But that's my second email. That's once I've started getting them to talk. my first thing is to just get them to respond. And so anytime you reach out to somebody, go, how can I make it as easy as possible for them to respond? And so if you think about a small business specialist or a contracting officer or a program officer, it's a little different for each one of them. A really quick idea that's just popping in my head that's a good one for a program office is, hey, do you happen to have an org chart for your office, right? Something like that. Or is this the most current org chart for your office? If I can just get them to respond, now I can start talking to them. Does it sound like I'm trying to manipulate it a little bit? I am. I'm trying to do it in both a way of selfish, get them to respond, but also respecting their time. How do I help them look at my email, respond, all of it within 60 seconds or less? All right, so on the next slide, I want to show you just a voicemail script and an email template. And so here on the voicemail script, the idea, and this is a different slide, but the idea of a voicemail script when you're doing this is you want to be able to just have a voicemail you can leave in 30 seconds or less. And so here's an example of a voicemail that I leave. I'm giving it to you as a way to think about how is your voicemail when you call. My biggest lesson for you in here is write your voicemail script down and use the exact same one every single time you make a new call. And if you're making a follow-up call, you can tweak this just a little bit to say, I'm following up to a previous voicemail. Love to have an intro call. As a reminder, we do Office 365. And at this point, I no longer am saying the second time, if convenient, I'm free the 2 a.m. or 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. In the first call, when I do call, though, I am trying to give people choices. And you can see the same thing in the email template where I say, hey, John, I support federal agencies like you and hope to have a quick intro call, right? I'm just driving in. This is my email script for when I'm trying to schedule a meeting. Here, I'm quickly saying our focus is 365. Our focus is elevators. Our focus is janitorial services. Wanted to see if there might be areas we can team up on together. And I just got to improve this. And then I'm saying, if convenient, right, I'm free next Thursday or Tuesday, 10 a.m. or 2 p.m. And the idea of Tuesday and Thursday, 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. is giving people choices. When you send somebody a message and you're trying to schedule something, always say this day or this day, this time or this time. When you do, even when you do it to me, all of us are like, you know what, 2 o'clock on Thursday works. You've just made it easier for me to respond by giving me a choice. If I don't like the choices, I will tell you. But if those choices are good for me, I'm able to drive right into it. Okay, so let's talk about the last point of how do you get federal buyers to respond to your call. It's often, like I said in the beginning of this training, people are just reaching out and only leaving one or making one attempt or two attempts, and they're stretching it out over weeks or something. You're never going to have any luck on that. You need a process for following up. Success is in the follow-up. In everything you do, success is in the follow-up. And so the first thing I wanted to ask you is just think about the reasons on why they didn't get back to you. If you sent an email or you left a voicemail, why didn't they get back to you, right? So think about why you don't get back to folks. If I do that myself, if I say, why don't I get back to folks? Well, I just told you that I had a big stack, an email from somebody asking for my help, and it was this big, huge chunk of text. I like helping people. Literally, I'm here today helping people. I like helping people. That person, though, made it hard for me to help them, so I just moved on. That's one reason why I might not get back to folks. Can you see the federal buyer doing the same? Another reason might be like yesterday, or actually the day before yesterday and yesterday. The day before yesterday, I was working, but I had this massive migraine. And then yesterday, it was so bad, I just had to cancel all my meetings and the live training. And I still have it kind of today, but what happens is I got sick and things start getting behind. And so I didn't get back to you because, one, I didn't care. I was sick and I was taking care of myself. Two, I didn't really see your emails to me, and I need to go back through all my emails, and I get, again, hundreds, and so do the buyers. And so I want you to think about why your buyers don't get back to you. And the easiest way to understand them is to think about, why don't you get back to people? If somebody reaches out to you for something, why aren't you following up? You know, sometimes it's because we just didn't do a good job. We didn't follow up. That's fair. But sometimes there's all these legitimate reasons. We got life, our bosses on our back. You've got HR problems. They got HR problems, whatever it is. There's all these reasons. And so the one main reason that is not is that they don't want to talk to you. For the most part, federal buyers don't ignore your outreach because they don't want to talk to you. They ignore your outreach for 1,000 other reasons, but it is not because they don't want to talk to you. The idea is if you follow up, you will stay on their radar and you will be able to start. They will eventually come back when it's convenient to them. So my recommendation to you is follow up at least twice a week. You don't want to be a pest, right? There's this bullet I put at the bottom: be a professional, not a pest. So a professional follows up. I'm just touching base. I'm very interested in working with you. I'm very committed to us eventually talking. I'm not trying to be a pest. I'm sure as heck not being unprofessional or annoying. And so if you follow up twice a week, one time it could be a phone call, another time it could be an email, and you're just referencing it. I know you're really busy. Just wanted to resurface this to the top of your inbox. That's a normal way of telling somebody, and I get people that do that to me all the time. Hey, just bringing this to the top of your inbox. And literally, if you're on my training, if you have asked me for something, I love it when you do that. Like, just reach out and say, hey, I'm surfacing this back to the top of your inbox, or whatever you want to do. I don't particularly avoid phone calls. I love phone calls to the federal buyer because not many people leave voicemails, but they listen to it. So I like staggering my outreach with voicemail and email. I have on my website, govconchamber.com, in the blog, you can go find an article we wrote that has a 30-day follow-up process. And the idea is, how do you follow up over 30 days? And you just stretch that out, right? People need to hear from you at least 20 or 30 times. And usually it's more like 40 to 60 times. They need to hear from you that many times before they're like, oh yeah, let's connect. Unless they say no, the answer is always maybe or yes, right? In my mind, the answer is always yes, unless you say no. I don't even deal with maybe. It's just yes, you just haven't said it yet. But if you get into a process of doing outreach with a really concise, easy to respond to email or voicemail, and then your process continues with a follow-up for 30 or 60 days, then they will get back to you. You will get that meeting. They will be thinking to themselves, wow, this person is persistent, right? And not a pest. They won't think you're a pest. It's just like you're just staying on track. And if you stagger that, you'll stay on their radar and you will get those meetings. Okay, so actually it just occurred to me I didn't do my last steps, but here's what I want you to do as you go forward. The biggest thing I want you to do is this. Do you have a voicemail script written down? If you don't, get that thing written down right now. The second thing I want you to do, and I apologize, the next steps are wrong here. I lost yesterday, so I lost today. But my second thing I want you to do is I want you to pick 10 people for next week that you want to get meetings with. We have a customer right now in our workshop who said that they started reaching out. Actually, it was he started reaching out. He reached out to 8 people, 4 have already scheduled meetings. That's a 50% rate, right? I was telling him, look, that's cool and all, but put your expectation down in the 5% level. But anyways, who are your 10 that you really want to meet with next week? 10 industry, 10 agency, doesn't matter. Who are the 10 people you want to schedule a meeting with? And then reach out to them on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3 times next week. So you could do Monday is a voicemail and then an email. And then Wednesday, you follow up with an email, just resurfacing this to the top of your inbox. And then Friday, you follow up with a voicemail saying, hey, hope you had a great week. I was just following up, trying to schedule a meeting. If you've got some time next week, let's connect. But commit to calling 10 people next week, following some of the guidance I just gave you today, and making sure your outreach messaging is very easy for them to respond to. Remember what I said, it's like, make sure that thing has one ask and it's easy to respond to. When you do that, you're going to be able to have a lot of success. Hey, just a reminder on the NASA vendor database, if you haven't already signed up for NASA and you're interested in working for NASA, go sign up on their NASA vendor database. You can go into my newsletter. You can go into my feed on LinkedIn here, and you'll see all sorts of NASA links that I have where I put a video together showing you how you can register in 5 minutes or less. It's really important, I believe, for you to be where the buyers are. And NASA's vendor database is their supplier portal. It's where they're trying to encourage their buyers to go to find a company like yours. It's all part of the process, right? And government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. I will see you in the next training. I hope you have a great weekend.